I'm Rick Doherty, and today I'm going to be doing a little cross promotion. For almost 9 years, I have been a DJ for the online rock radio station irockradio.me. Because the program director and I both worked for the same rock radio station in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania before he started iRock, and he's brought a lot of listeners over from that station, I go by my old radio name. I just mentioned that in case you decide to listen and it confuses you. Well, recently I interviewed Patrick Myers of the Queen tribute act Killer Queen for irockradio.me. This band plays all over the world, especially in the US and the UK, where we happen to have a lot of listeners. I thought it would be fun to air the interview here as well. If you're interested in seeing Killer Queen in concert, check out tour dates at killerqueenonline.com. If you're looking for a place to hear rock music that's on the heavy side, check out irockradio.me. Right now, let's welcome Patrick Myers. Thanks for being here, Patrick.
Hey, it's a pleasure.
So, for people who don't know anything about Killer Queen, which I think is fewer and fewer people every year because you are definitely such a big deal, you're not just a Queen tribute band. You have been doing this since the early 90s.
Yeah, we were one of the first tribute bands on the planet to anyone. We were very much at the the spearhead of the whole thing. Because when we started, there was no other Queen tribute band to see. You couldn't, so we had to do it ourselves, or so we could feel like we'd been at a Queen concert. So it was a sort of semi-improvised kind of thing. You know, we all wanted to feel like we'd been at a Queen concert. Freddie had died, and we were all devastated by that. And we thought the only way to do that would be to do it ourselves. We didn't really see it going beyond a couple of shows, but we wanted to make those shows brilliant. As brilliant as we could. We were students at the time, and it just took off. It took off extraordinarily quickly, and we were sort of like ushered into the West End, and we were the first ever tribute band in the West End, the first tribute to Queen, the first Queen type show in the West End. And it was an extraordinary kind of debut, really, and that led to us playing the same arenas that Queen played with Freddie in their heyday, and then coming over to America and becoming regulars at Red Rocks. We've just played there again this year. To thousands of people, and yeah, it's been extraordinary, unpredictable, and exhilarating as an experience, you know.
And sort of being in this pioneering area of the tribute bands,
Yeah,
and right now in the industry, the tribute bands are kind of carrying a lot of venues right now because live music isn't quite as popular as it was, and then the pandemic really put a kink into everything. And now a lot of bands like you, and of course you being on the forefront of this, you're almost saving the industry.
I think the difference is because, I mean, there's it's a combination of things. It's the way that music is distributed these days. Um, it's not really sold in the same way it used to be sold. So people don't invest in bands in the same way they used to invest in. You know, if you spent all your pocket money on a band, buying their CD or their album or whatever format, you know, you felt like you were part of a club, you know. Whereas now you can just experience music just by sort of like asking Alexa, you know, to play something for you, you know. And that doesn't involve you in the same way. But it also means that you've got every bit of music at your disposal. So it sort of kind of works for tribute bands like Queen. Certainly works for us in as much as kids discover Queen. Queen are an amazing band to discover as in your early teens. They're an amazing band to discover at any point. But that's when I just speak from experience. That's when I discovered Queen, when I was like, I guess I was about 13 or 14. They blew my mind. I just thought they were extraordinary. And kids are still doing that these days because all music exists at the same time. Music, you know, you when you search for music, you don't say, and it has to be written this year. Whereas before, everything had to be, you were looking at the charts, you were taping the charts from the radio, now it doesn't work like that. No one's really interested in the charts that much because it's not that big a deal. It doesn't reflect something they've done. It was like voting when you went to buy a record because you were voting your record up the charts. No one, when they stream a piece of music, thinks, "Ah, I'm helping my band get up on these streaming charts." It just the whole metric has changed, and your relationships with bands have changed, and it just comes down to whether you like the music or not. It doesn't matter when it was written, it doesn't matter when it was recorded. It just how does it sound? Do I love it? And Queen wins on all those fronts because when kids discover the music, like I mean, the amount of kids we got rushing through our doors to see our shows after Bohemian Rhapsody film came out was enormous, and we still see that now. So yeah, I don't know whether tribute bands are sort of saving the industry in any way, but I think they're a reflection of what the industry is like at the moment. They're a natural response to that.
And when you try to recreate a show, when you try to put together an entertainment experience with somebody else's music, and there are a lot of bands that you could pick that would have been a lot easier. But one of the
Yeah,
best voices in all of rock
yeah,
history with Freddie
yeah.
Mercury, one of the best showmen in rock history. How do you take that responsibility each and every night you go on stage to deliver for
Well,
people who are used to seeing Freddie Mercury?
yeah. I think you've got to do two things. You've got to work hard at what you do, train your voice and look after your voice and keep yourself healthy. But so you can give everything you can on stage. And study what you're doing and all that sort of stuff, and take the sort of like research and preparation, and then when you get on stage, kind of like almost put that to one side and just jump on stage and have a good time. Because Freddie Mercury, was part of his this part of his showmanship was his sheer vitality and enthusiasm and exuberance on stage. I mean, look at Live Aid. He was just I mean, he was just a vision of charisma. And that's what you've got to kind of remember the fun element of it, and that's how I sort of deal with those two sides of things. Yes, you do all the hard work, but when you do all the hard work so you can play, if you know what I mean.
And speaking of Live Aid, you were actually asked by Sir Bob Geldof to represent Queen or restage Queen at a tribute to Live Aid. What was that experience like?
Yeah, that was an event in Malta, and Bob Geldof was headlining, and I think for fun he decided to put a few tribute bands together, the ones that had been big at Live Aid. So there was a U2 and there was us, and I can't remember who else was there, but so we did meet Bob. He seemed quite nice. He seemed all right. And I think it was maybe Spider or someone from the Boomtown Rats that was with him. I'm not sure who was there with him, but one of the Rats was with him too. That was part of his solo touring band. Oh no, his name's not Spartan. Anyway, but I can't remember. Beyond that, it was a beautiful evening. All I remember was meeting Bob, having a nice time. The show went down well, and then I stood in the wings and watched Bob do his thing with the audience and play his songs, and thoroughly enjoyed his set. And it was a big crowd. It was an outdoor amphitheater, and it was just a beautiful, beautiful experience. We really enjoyed it. Yeah, it was nice to do, and a privilege to meet Bob because I know Bob and Freddie became friends after Live Aid, and they even wrote a song together. I think it was the Song of Indifference or something. I'm not sure what it was, but yeah, it was a nice little feather in the cap, but it was just an enjoyable experience.
And when you start getting recognized as being this premier Queen cover band, like when people think of going to see a Queen tribute act, they think of seeing you. And that's a testament to both how long you're doing it and the quality that you put into your show. How does that feel to, like you said, when you started, it was just going to be, a couple shows.
It was, yeah. I don't think of ourselves as the premier this or the premier that, even though I just think of ourselves as us. I don't think of ourselves in terms of where we sit in a pantheon of tribute bands. There's lots of tributes to Queen. There's some brilliant. I mean, there's the Queen Extravaganza, which is the official tribute. There's an extraordinarily talented person called Mark Martell, who also does Queen, and does Freddie's voice beautifully. So I mean, I just regard myself as in that, as in the mix. It's great that we get, win awards and that people, come to our shows. But I never take that for granted. I never assume anything about where we are in as you say, as I was saying, the pantheon of this, that, and the other. I just think, is tonight's show? I want tonight's show to be good. How can we make next year's show different, in terms of look or style or promo or whatever, and that's all I ever think. I just think about it, in just one foot in front of the other. So it's nice that you say those things about us, but it's just not how I think, really. I'm just happy to be doing this, and I'm enjoying doing it, and the audience is enjoying it, and those are my kind of main go-to sort of like, goalposts.
And you had a real honor back in 2001 where you got to recreate Queen's harmonies for a Fatboy Slim song.
He did a mix of it. It wasn't his song. It was this other duo called Raven Mays, who were very nice chaps. It was all right. It was really last minute. They just called me up and said, "We want you in the studio tomorrow." I didn't have much time to prepare anything. And we wanted to lay down these harmonies for the opening couple of phrases of Bohemian Rhapsody. Is this the real life? Is this just fantasy? I literally had to sing those. That was it. I had to sing that and layer up the harmonies, and that and I was, and then I sat in the studio and watched them mix at a furious pace. This dance track, they were just literally, it was so fast what they were doing, putting it all together, and slamming beats in, and changing this and discussing this and making decisions and this and the other. And I just sat very quietly in the background and watched their workflow and just was thought, oh, this is really interesting. And then I left, and then it became a dance hit number one. So I had a number one single with my voice on it. And Fatboy Slim did a mix because Fatboy Slim was very much the toast of the town. He's still he's still the premier DJ in England and probably all over the world. I don't really know. I don't follow that sort of stuff. But yeah, it was just another one of those weird things that have happened along the way. I didn't have much time to think about it. I was literally just said, "Would you sing some harmonies in a studio?" I didn't know what it was for. Because they want someone who sounds a bit like Freddie, and I didn't even think about whether I wanted to do it or not. I just went. It was just a question of, are you free tomorrow? And I answered yes. We'll come along to the studio day, and you've just got to do some harmonies. And I went, oh, okay. I didn't I didn't get filled in about what the thing was until it was already out. Or what they were trying to do. So I'd already sort of agreed to do it by the time I worked out what on earth it was I was doing. So that was it, really, and it was enjoyable, and I think they did a good job, and it sold well for them, and I was pleased. So yeah, it's just another little crazy little diversion that happened along the way, but yeah, it was great fun.
And I'm always fascinated with how you put together a set when you're trying to put on a show. Are you
Yeah.
just thinking, what were Queen's biggest hits? Or are you always trying to go up every night and try to say, well, we don't know if this person's ever seen us before. We're going to
Oh,
try to mix things up?
yeah, no,
Or
you can't play stuff that people don't know all night long when you've got a catalog like Queen's, because so you do have to put a lot of stuff in that people know, because Queen stuff is this their crown jewels are so fabulous. You don't want to ignore them, but having said that, you want to put stuff in that are some the old phrase deep cuts. I don't know. They don't seem particularly deep to me. If you're even a casual Queen fan, you'd probably know these songs. But we put some in, without naming all of them. Stone Cold Crazy is a good example. It's from 1974. Great track from, I think, one of their best albums, Sheer Heart Attack. So if you're looking for a great Queen experience, listen to that album. It is so perfectly done. I think it's flawless, totally flawless as an album. Or that a lot of the songs segue into each other. It's beautifully done. Creatively, they were just so on fire lyrically as well. Such a lyrically strong album. Brilliant. So yeah, so I got lost in a little Queen diversion there, but it was, yeah. You try and sprinkle the set with stuff that will engage an audience because they don't know it, rather than in spite of the fact. And then you balance that out with stuff that they absolutely do know. And you know, you structure the set in terms of light and shade, and you know, big opening, and then you know you bring it down a little bit, and then another big bit, and then you have a quiet section, and then bang, you know, you've got the rollout for the end, and then the triumphant encore and all that sort of stuff. You know, um, so yeah, we have a lot of fun with that, but we don't only ever play the hits.
And I love that you've been doing it for all these years, but you'll still get, you know, like you said in that last answer, lost in a bit of Queen. Like you
Oh,
still
all the
have that
time.
same passion for the band, and that's amazing.
Yeah, well, they're just so good, you know. Um, it's you'd be mad not to. I probably thought about Queen more intensively than I would have done, and you know, if I hadn't done this and I just gone on to have a normal adult life. You know, I've sort of studied their music and thought just found myself thinking about them a lot because this is what I do. But I find it very rewarding thinking about them, and I find I just the more I think about them, the more I realize how unique they are as a band and how special they are as a band. You know, and their recording. I don't, you know, very few artists. I can think of Queen and David Bowie, and I think even probably John Lennon, who had a, you know, who were great right till the end. You know, John Lennon with his the songs he wrote on Double Fantasy was some of his career highlights. You know, something like "Woman" and "Watching the Wheels" and "Nobody Told Me" and "Just Like Starting Over" and "Beautiful Boy," beautiful songs. David Bowie with Black Star, were just amazing songs. And then Queen with Innuendo. Um, but there's very few artists that sustain over those amount of decades that are still good at the finish line, you know, and still, you know, surprising you and doing career. A song like Show Must Go On is extraordinary. I mean, his vocal on that is it takes my breath away every time I hear it. It's a deeply engaging, riveting song to listen to. Innuendo likewise, and you know songs like My Bijou and Days of Our Lives, just very very moving, very 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 moving songs. So yeah, it's still passionate for me, um, but that's because it's good, you know. That's because it's so great, you know. That's it. That's why.
And when you started this act back in 1993, like you
Yeah.
said, it had been a few years after Freddie had passed, but the musical landscape, at least here in
Mm.
the US, was very different. Like it wasn't what it was when Queen was at its peak, it was the height of grunge. Was it nice to sort of take this band who maybe wasn't what the cool kids were listening to at the time and
Well,
bringing them to a new generation?
Queen were never cool, really. You know, I always used to sort of defend Queen to you know, I had a range of friends, and quite a lot of my friends were into Queen, but there'd be always be a selection of friends that weren't into Queen and couldn't, you know, weren't in, and because they weren't cool. And so I was always trying to say, no, no, you've got to listen to the catalog, and it's not about this, that, and the other. They're just brilliant songs. Can you hear these are brilliant songs? You know, um, and I think that's changed now. I think I think Queen have sort of shrugged off, you know, that entire little sort of cul-de-sac of thinking. And the songs finally now sort of stand on their own, and you know, you don't have to, you know, justify this or compare Queen to, you know, Queen are just this entity in themselves now, which for me is like, yes, you know. You know, I just wish it had been like that when I was a kid. You know, it was Queen were always, because I always thought that there was a ground. I think, you know, a lot of people, you know, when you watch something like Live Aid, you think, well, actually, people do love Queen, you know, because everyone at that concert had bought the ticket before they knew Queen were on the bill. So they weren't the diehard Queen fans. They were just, you know, a cross section of the British population. And they all threw their hands in the air and they all did Radio Gaga and they all just, you know, screamed their love for Queen at the top of their lungs, you know, and so did the rest of the world. So I think, and I think now it's got to the point where everyone's realised that, you know, Queen are just great, Queen are just brilliant, and they should be cherished and, you know, lauded for being So great. And surviving the slings and arrows of outrageous music magazines. So yeah, good on them. I just love their tenacity. I love the fact that they've stuck at it and that they've flown their own flag. And we're not an official tribute or anything like that. We're just a tribute that's been around a long time. But in our own way, we've tried to fly our own unofficial flag for Queen and celebrate them. And if we've helped in any way whatsoever, that's brilliant. That's great. And our mission statement is to give people a good time, a good night out, and that's what we want to do. And we do it in the company of some of the best songs ever written. And it's our privilege to do that.
Well, I think that is basically the best way to end this conversation. Patrick Myers from Killer Queen, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to talk some
Okay.
Queen and talk some Killer Queen.
Hey, it's been a pleasure. Nice to see you.
I'm Rick Doherty, and that was Patrick Myers of the Queen Tribute Act, Killer Queen. I did that interview for the online rock radio station, irockradio.me. Do me a favor and like, comment, and subscribe here on the Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty YouTube channel, and I'll talk to you soon.